Well, good morning, everybody. Jeff Slakey here on Daybreak, and I have got three great guests in studio today talking about credit unions, not only here locally, but across the world, and we're going to focus on Africa here today. Jim Morrell from Peninsula Credit Union is on the air with me, as well as George Ombado from the African Confederation of Cooperative Savings and Credit Associations, and David Mategwa is the board chair for the Kenyan Police SACCO, which is kind of like a credit union. We'll get into more of that in a moment. Jim, thanks for bringing these guys on. Tell us a little bit about why they're here and what you guys have been doing this past week.
Terrific. Yeah, thanks, Jeff, for having us. It's exciting to have my friends George and David here from Nairobi, Kenya. We are all what are termed credit union development educators. We have certification and understanding of cooperative operating principles, as well as development issues such as clean water, advancement of women's issues, savings mobilization, shelter, hunger, issues that are prevalent around the world, and in some regions more prevalent, but all of those development issues also here in our local community in Shelton, Mason County as well. So I met George in 2014 at one of these meetings, credit union development education meetings in North Carolina, and we've been friends since. I've been to visit him and see the work that he's doing with credit unions, not only in Kenya, but in 28 different countries on the African continent. And David has become a friend as well. David is part of the Kenyan police force and chair of the board of directors of the third largest credit union in Kenya, the Police SACCO Credit Union, Savings and Credit Cooperative Organizations, as they're called there, or credit unions here.
Interesting. George, let's start with you. I kind of want to get a sense of, I talk with Jim a lot about credit unions and how they are different from banks and other financial institutions. Are there banks in the sense of what we come to know banks here in America, in Kenya, and across the African continent? And how are they similar and or different with the credit unions here too?
Okay, thank you, Jeff, for hosting us. I'll say that the credit unions in America are just similar as credit union in Africa, Asia, or Latin America, Caribbean, mainly because the credit union philosophy is the same. The common bond, the issues about how to join, the issue about that we focus on the members. We are not for profit. Our focus is how do we serve community. That's the same thing that we do in Africa.
Yeah.
Now, compared to the commercial banks in Africa, for instance, credit union, which we call SACCOs, commercial banks have higher rates in Africa. Commercial banks do not support community projects as compared to credit unions. Credit unions are member-owned. Members are control on what they want. They're control on the kind of product and services that they would like the credit union to offer. So I think that's a common similarity between both countries or both continents.
And so you oversee 28 African countries. That's a little more than half of the countries in Africa. Mm-hmm. And are you able to work across the whole continent? Are there any major barriers? I know there are deserts and they're quite large and things like that. How do you guys all connect with each other to make it a better experience for the credit union?
The advantage of credit unions, because we have a common style or a common objective globally, we're able to network, and through partnership, we're able to reach out things that perhaps we wouldn't have done so if we were on our own. For instance, having met Jim, as is indicated, 2014, Jim was in Africa just 6 months after we met. And ever since, we've done a couple of things together. He's come back to Kenya. He's gone to Zimbabwe. We hope he'll be doing more projects with us. So ours is how can we partner with other credit unions, other networks to support the movement. The challenges that we face perhaps are not the challenges that Jim will face in America. When you talk about gender disparity, it's not prevalent here. You talk about youth inclusion. because for us we believe credit union is about inclusion. So if that is lacking, then we need this kind of interaction to help us. Now, the other second issue that perhaps I'll say is a huge barrier is the language. With that kind of membership, 28 with 20 active membership, the challenge we'd have is having to engage with different regions. The West Africa, which predominantly are French-speaking, but we also have English-speaking, so that's the challenge that we have too. We're also trying to reach out to our membership using religious barriers, using Sharia laws to support even our Muslim brothers and sisters to get into the credit union by saying some of the things that will prevent you from being in the credit union are taken care of through Sharia compliance products and services.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
David, talk to me a little bit about the Kenyan Police Credit Union. Would this be similar to like Peninsula Credit Union, as it's a company, Peninsula Credit Union, and the Kenya Police Credit Union? Is it similar like that?
Yeah, SACCOs and credit union are similar. Police SACCO, only that is for police officers, but we have opened a common bond, and anybody can join now the police. But 80% are police officers, security officers, but other people have joined who are not necessarily police officers. So I can say whatever they are doing, we are doing the similar things because the philosophy is the same all over the world. So what we are doing as Police SACCO is the same way Peninsula. But what I've just realized when I visited Jim's credit union is that Jim has been saying it's a rural. This is my first time in Seattle. Mm-hmm. He has been telling us when he visits that, I have a small credit union, rural. But to my surprise, I found it's not rural to me.
Right.
Because I'm trying to put it in African context. Rural in Kenya, it means I was to find people queuing, making noise. One teller is struggling with them. Everything is manual. But I've seen everything is digital. They are ahead of us. So I've learned something from Jim, and it doesn't know. I've picked a few things that I'll take back home, and see how I can implement. I can't implement 100% because I can't afford that. But the little I'm going to do in my credit union, the SACCO, I think it will improve because there's things we have not done, and he has done.
What are some of the technological maybe advancements that you've seen at Peninsula that surprised you or you could implement?
The one I cannot even afford to do is doing a card, a credit card instant, and give a PIN and activate it within 24 hours.
Yeah.
That one I can't even trim that I can also take home because we can't afford that. It's only banks that normally do, because for us we link with the cooperative bank. We have a bank that belongs for all the cooperatives. Okay. We link our credit on that, so we rely on that bank to get our credit card. So we don't produce as a credit. I'm impressed that the Peninsula, being called rural, can do that.
Yeah.
And also the ICT platform is so high than whatever we have. We are trying to come up with something, but I'm very sure it can't match what I've seen in the Peninsula.
George, you talked a little bit about gender disparity and youth disparity. Are the credit unions in Africa, are they starting the conversations that are helping to change the minds of the people in the country about the roles of women and youth in the country?
Absolutely. We look at the continent. Africa has a population of 1.2 billion, actually 1.3 billion, out of which it's estimated that around 70% of them are those below the age of 40. So that's a topical issue that we don't have an option but to have a serious conversation. And as a COSCA, there's a discussion that we've been having. Jim has been part of that discussion just to help us. And we've come to his credit union and we've seen the inclusivity that is clear within his management, his staff. But in same line, when you talk about rural, I'll just pick up from what David has said. In Africa, rural has a certain characteristics of challenges regarding infrastructure, challenges regarding the social amenities. That means people are not available in that particular environment. It's basically agriculture based.
Yeah.
But when this particular environment, you talk about rural, you can have big companies or big miller industries like what we've just observed. For us, with the rural structure or feature, you'll see that there's certain mindset that we still have to change. And the last 3 days, we've been in a program called Development Educators Program, whose theme was mainly cultural. Then how do we address our practices or our ways of doing things to conform with the current scenarios? That will mean as Africans or as credit unions in Africa, from Ghana to South Africa to Malawi, should at least try and include women, ensure that there is a generation balance within the membership base. And I think if we do that, there'll be more, we'll be supporting the idea about credit union being an inclusive industry.
Jim, I know you work hard on this inclusivity, and you are very community-minded when you are out, including with conversations like this. When you hear things like, we have a idea of what rural is here to us, and I know we do a lot of conversations about rural development in Mason County. How does that kind of change your mindset on things?
Well, both gentlemen are explaining things very in real terms relative to the context that they are from in Kenya. To here, we are rural. This to them is not.
Yeah.
For me, the common ground is that we as human beings care about one another and care about our families. And in order to support those families, there needs to be a financial foundation that is provided so that we can support the basic needs that we have, shelter, transportation, utility payments, and so forth in our context. And I have been part of conversations and made friends in the countries that George mentioned, in Rwanda and Zimbabwe, Kenya, across the continent, where that foundation is still critical for the family. The family still wants to take care of one another. So the more that we can help them save money, the more that we can help educate them about the importance of finance and their own personal budgets, then hopefully the better off they are. And if those individuals and the individual households are better off financially, then I strongly believe that they have the money to be able to put back into our communities in terms of economic development. So in our case here, generating and paying some of our local retailers here in Shelton or in Mason County, in same thing in even a rural context in Kenya, that they can pay their fellow merchants or people selling goods and services in the rural communities.
David, talk to me about how you go about paying some of those services. If you're unable or it's harder to get cards, to swipe the cards or debit cards or things like that, how is money transferred from families to families if they need help like that, or within the police credit union? How does all that work? I mean, we are so focused on, when I think about it, it's all technology. It's all ones and zeros and computers and this and that. But if you are in a truly agricultural setting, how do you transfer those kind of funds? Explain to somebody who might have any idea how that works.
Okay, for the case of Kenya Police SACCO, our membership is nationwide.
Okay.
It's nationwide. They are spread all over the country. And we are lucky that we have put ICT platform that they can transfer money, they can withdraw on the phone.
Oh, okay.
On the phone, we have a mobile app that all the members can withdraw and transfer to their families wherever they are. They are not necessarily supposed to come to the branch or to the headquarters to withdraw. They can do that on mobile.
How often is somebody able to make it to a branch? I mean, this is right down the street from us. Peninsula is right down the street. I can't imagine that's the case across Kenya. You know, is there a lot of travel distance that some people may face? Is that a barrier as well?
Yes, it is, because Kenya is from one town to another is a distance.
Yeah.
And we have only managed to open 6 branches only within the country. So we still have far-end areas where you can travel like 5 hours, 6 hours to reach to where there's a branch. So there is that problem of accessing the branch. That's why we put them on mobile application. But there's some areas, remote areas, that we don't have network. So they have to travel some kilometers to get to access network so that they can transact.
In many cases, I would say that the mobile technology that has been implemented in various African countries began sooner and took deeper traction than it did here, even in the United States. So while it's a basic expectation that financial institutions, including credit unions here in the U.S., have online banking and mobile banking, and that they have a lot of bells and whistles in the mobile and online platforms, there is also an expectation that if I want to go to a physical branch, I can do that.
Yeah.
When that expectation just has never existed, ever, then it helped advance some of the technology tools, I think, in Kenya for some of those rural areas. But to get to a place where Wi-Fi can connect your mobile device still may take a period of time.
Peninsula does a lot to give back into the community. When it comes to the 28 countries in the co-op, what are some of the ways that the whole co-op is able to give back to the country in rebuilding efforts or infrastructure improvement? And then how does it boil down to the individual credit unions like the police one?
The way the African structure works is each country has an association, which probably here you refer to as a league. Now, the league affiliates to a COSCA. So in Kenya, for instance, you have Kenya Police, the teachers, the electrical circle, they combine under the umbrella of Cusco. So they work under the umbrella of Cusco. So Cusco coordinates activities that are around the country. So when there are things that perhaps need to be improved or gaps that need to be filled, the Cusco equivalent in Africa engage with the COSCA. So a COSCA, for instance, will say, I'm having a challenge. We're having a challenge in Ghana, where Jim also has met a couple of people from Ghana, and they say, Jim, could you help us on issues to do with how to develop some governance policies? Because we know that you are skillful in this area. So Jim comes in and volunteers. So these are kind of relationships that we've been trying to build for the past 2 or 3 years.
And then what are some of the more individual ways, like a one-on-one situation where you educate your members as how best to save, like Jim was mentioning, or ways to make your stretch the money a little bit further?
Okay, some of the things that we've done across the continent, and these are about leadership and the goodwill, is we've taken advantage, and we encourage more goodwill ambassadors to do that. If I'm religious, I go to church. So I ask for an opportunity after the service, can I address the people to talk to them about financial inclusion? If I'm meeting my family members, actually this is something that is so common in Kenya and Ghana, particular, Gambia, where you find certain individuals, like we meet today, we've met. One of the things we'll have done after the show is to ask you, are you a member of a credit union?
Ah, very good. Very nice.
Yeah, so we take every opportunity to spread the word.
Sure.
So if you're not a member of a credit union, we'll have asked you the best credit union now to join is
Sure.
Peninsula Credit Union.
That is,
Yeah.
and that's true.
Yeah.
Very neat. So the awareness is there, and people are reminded often about credit unions. Very nice. David, tell me a little bit about any kind of personal one-on-one ways that you can think that the Kenyan Police Credit Union has helped its individual members, or maybe even not members, but just knowing that it's important to give back.
Right now, as we are talking, as I was leaving home, I've dispatched a group of board members and senior management to go around the country. They are in groups, just visiting police station and police post and police base, just going and sitting with the members, getting to know what the problem they have, and also teaching them how they can save and how they can borrow and how they can utilize the loan that they have taken, so that they can also help their families.
I'm sure that it's been quite an eye-opening experience. Is this your first time here in the States?
Yeah, no, this is my first time in Washington,
Uh-huh.
but I've been in States once or twice. Yes.
And Jim, when's the next plans to head back over? It sounds like they have work for you in Ghana.
It does. There's anticipation that I'll be going back to Kenya and Zimbabwe next spring, end of May, beginning of June.
And are these relationships that not only the United States or North America has with Africa, but also South America or Asia or Europe?
The Credit Union Development Education Program that I spoke about earlier began here in the United States in 1982 with a grant that Senator Biden wrote to help support the cooperative system, and it's the only program that still exists today, no longer supported by USAID, but within the National Credit Union Foundation. It's been so successful that the United States Credit Union Development Education Program has been replicated in 7 different regions around the world. So I was very fortunate enough to be able to attend the inaugural Africa Development Education Program in Nairobi in 2014. But there's also programs in Europe, in the UK, in Asia, in Canada, and the Caribbean. Am I forgetting any, George?
The Philippines.
The Philippines as well. So we all are cuties, CUDEs, the Philippines, the PHDE, ADE in Africa. So.
Well, this has been a fascinating conversation. Again, I am here with Jim Morrell from Peninsula Credit Union and George Ombado, the CEO of the African Confederation of Cooperative Savings and Credit Associations, and David Mategwa, who's the board chair for the Kenyan Police Credit Union in Kenya. It was really nice meeting with you guys and talking with you. This is really fascinating stuff. I am a member of a credit union, by the way. And I have,
It's good to know that.
That's good.
my whole life I've been a member of one. So very neat, very cool. Well, thanks for coming on.
Very
Thank you.
appreciate the opportunity, Jeff. Thanks.